Peace be upon you, everyone. I have a question. It's quite a long question. Hopefully it won't take too long. So, I have a question about opening our hearts. I did the Osho Nada Brahma meditation because I wanted to give out love to the universe and to receive it. I have done this meditation before a few times, and it always brings an emotional ending. I am able to fully give love to the universe in all aspects, to the earthly, to the divine, everything. But when it comes to the part of receiving love, I really struggle. I feel the universe gives me love in abundance, and it can feel overwhelming. It is a feeling of absolute gratitude, but then I consider how I would like to be in love, to have that depth of love that I know exists between partners, because I have had that before. That seems even more overwhelming, and I am concerned that I almost energetically block that, because I don't want to unravel, to feel out of my depth. It's not so much that I feel lonely, but there is a longing, and I know I am not in a position where there are no hopes or fears. I do hope to fall in love. I am concerned that if I can't receive love without being overwhelmed, then I will fear embracing the real journey of opening my heart. I am doing the daily practice, and I think because of the understanding I have of Vajrayogini and Heruka, that they are one, always in union, that it increases that yearning, but also that fear. The love I receive from the divine sources feels wonderful, because I can fully love them back. But when I consider how that would manifest in a partner, I just feel overwhelmed. I don't seek a partner, and I practice patience. But perhaps that's an excuse and is actually blocking me from allowing love to come in. I also trust the universe completely. And if it's not happening, then I can absolutely live with that, happily. I have considered that it may be because I need to continue having time to practice, and distractions wouldn't help. And I do understand that for whatever reason, it has to be perfect. But I have a concern that I am so fearful of being overwhelmed that I remain mute and do nothing to encourage love coming in a romantic sense. Any advice would be gratefully received. Thank you, as always. Love, Yang Chen. Every one of us has our own beauties, our own good qualities that we naturally take on the path. It flows easily for us. And for some people, it's to be loving to others. Some people, it's really easy to give. Yeah, really easy. For some people, it's a real challenge, like greed, miserliness with wealth, for example, can be a real problem. Some people can enjoy a pleasure with no problem, even if that pleasure is causing other people suffering. For example, smoking. Some people don't care that other people are getting upset by the smoke, and they just happily smoke. Whereas other people, they can't enjoy a pleasure. If it's causing, that smoke is causing suffering to someone else, they can't enjoy it. They can't do it. We all got very different temperaments and difficulties on the path and natural skills. So for some people, receiving love is a real difficulty. And on the Sufi path, we want to look at the subtle ways in which the whisperings of the shaitan, the lower self, the ego, hijacks the inability to receive love as humility. As if it's a problem to receive, like if you're wasting karma to receive a gift, and it's a bad thing that you're receiving something, then by clear and obvious logic, to give someone a gift is a punishment. Because you're giving them something that you yourself deem as something unpleasant, something that's blocking your spiritual path. Like, I shouldn't accumulate wealth. So if you give someone that, then you've just created that problem for them. So if you can't receive, if there's some trouble inside you, like you've got an issue with receiving gifts, then what does it mean to give? It's an important reflection. So receiving is a very important part of the flow of giving. It's important for people to give you things. If you block people giving you every direction, so we can recognize that we can have aspects of ourself we need to work on in terms of our greed, that we can't accept a gift without it distorting our mind. That's an important thing to be aware of. We're aiming to be like a flowing channel. They say like money's called currency. Like it flows. It's like a continuous flow of interaction with each other in creating our living environment. That's the economy, which is healthy. If you can't receive it, you can't move it on. So it's very It's very important that we know how to love ourselves, what that means. And of course, the Shaitanic forces hijack that in both ways. It hijacks it into the lower self, which then says, oh, it's okay to be selfish and just do what you like. It doesn't mean that. And then it hijacks the higher self, in which we refuse to accept anything because then we think that that's being selfish. And it hides in humility. The ego hides in humility. And it's always trying to be perfect. It's part of it, isn't it? It's always trying to be perfect. We can't be perfect in the way that the ego suggests we be perfect. And because we can't do that, that's how it continuously keeps us down. We continuously doubt. Like the ego makes us always go, grass is greener on the other side, but we do it with the inner critic. So it's that feeling of the part of our mind that's always like deflating us in our spiritual joy by bringing in logic on either side. So the two different dimensions of ourself, the lower self and the higher self, have different needs, different ways of overcoming them. And if we apply them at the wrong time for each other, then that's how the inner critic gets in. Like it's that way of applying it at the wrong time. So this is why we need a long time in study. Study of ourselves, understanding the knowledges, and I can probably easily understand what I'm saying, but to recognize it within yourself as it's happening, that's the work. To love ourselves, then we have to know what the self is. So it's not the lower self that we're loving, it's our higher self. And part of that loving the higher self is feeling worthy. We're unworthy on one level. Of course, how can we be worthy of the gifts that we're given? Like we don't do anything for them. And then the other sense is that we are created to worship the divine, to know the divine and fall back in love with the divine. And the ego can inflate our sense of sin as a way of hiding again, of a way of maintaining its separation. It's a very tricky little fellow. This brings us to the main fear of the ego, is that it will no longer exist. And when we bring love in, it will change us. The ego exists through habituated patterns. The ego exists in the same way that an image appears in a painting. If you alter the colors on the paint, a different image will appear. The correct understanding is you understand it's just an image. Just appearing to your eye, in your mind's eye. That's all it is. It's not a real thing. If you change the colours on the paint, a different image will appear. Change the colours of the paint, a different image will appear. You change your patterning, your sense of self will change. Now, we've habituated a sense of an ego that's survival oriented. And it's got lots of patterns and ideas and ways we've spoken to people and how we communicate with them and our ideas of the world. And we've got political views that were based on our ego patterning. We've developed philosophies and we've told people our philosophy. We've convinced them, oh, this is how we think and this is what we feel. And love comes and sweeps it all away. You look like a fool. This is like one way that we can be afraid of love. It's that we just realize everything we're doing was wrong. Right? My love just sweeps it all away. Like you might have been an atheist for 10 years and you have an experience of love of the divine, and it's like, can your ego handle it? Can you handle telling people I was completely wrong? And to address the fear of being overwhelmed, like the fear of something is usually worse than the thing itself. Maybe mentioned before, during the AIDS crisis, some people deliberately caught AIDS to stop being afraid of catching AIDS. It's like you can relax, you've got it now. Like that fear of what might happen, it's worse than anything else. It's true for a lot of people, isn't it? If not all of us. The fear of an event is just time consuming. We can, like in the AIDS crisis, then they're just thinking about it all the time. You can't enjoy sex, you can't enjoy, it's just this, what, and just, they couldn't take it. They'd rather just have it. They'd rather have a death sentence than a continual fear that you might get a death sentence. So when we focus on fear and safety, that's worse than the actual events themselves. So it creates, when you focus on safety, fear of being safe, it creates mental illness. You can't enjoy anything because the mind, we know from science, focuses on the negative in a much more powerful way than it focuses on the positive. If you tell someone they might have an accident, that's all they'll focus on. They won't leave their mind, and it prevents them from enjoying the actual act. And if you do it a lot, then it creates a depressed person, mentally ill people. So when we're focusing too much on the negative, so this is a tendency of the mind. So it's like we all have this tendency. And they say that courage is feeling the fear, and you do it anyway. It's not that we don't have the fears. It's not that we don't have the doubts. But we don't let them overwhelm our joy. Now, you alluded to something very important, that the union of our human life and our spiritual life. Some people have an inclination. It's very beautiful, and it works for some people too. Live in a cave for 20 years. Live in a monastery, become celibate, and don't speak to anyone, like in some of the intense Christian monasteries. And that works for some people, no doubt about it. But the path presented by the Holy Prophet is to unify our human life with our spiritual life. before we meet the spiritual path, we're often just overwhelmed by human emotion. And it's the human emotion in itself doesn't satisfy us enough. You know, it's an indicator of something deeper. And then we go into the deeper realms of falling in love with, we can call that which our Creator, the divine God, that which created the love that we crave. I mean, it's inconceivable, the source of love itself. And that fills us with protection, belonging, knowing, the purpose. But in and of itself, it creates a split, a duality. It's my spiritual life over here that I enjoy, and my human life over here which I don't like. Or I have my human life over here and a spiritual life which just seems abstract and, I don't really know how to connect with that. It's part of learning on the path of love, and why we're here, is to love other people. As the prophets say, peace be upon them. Unless you love other people, you don't have true faith. Unless you love other people as much as yourself, you don't have true faith. So it's this thing of loving yourself, knowing yourself, loving the others, loving the divine. And these three, the self, what we think of as others, and what we think of as the divine, and unifying. So when you see that you're in lack of one, it affects your connection with the other. This is what you're feeling. You're feeling imbalance. And as you beautifully say, you can't rush it. Yeah. And if you have refuge and faith, as you say, then yeah, I'm meant to be alone just now. It doesn't mean that you don't have a time where you kind of yearn for a beloved. It's important to note that you're like in your letter, that you have had it. So at least you have had it. So there's that practice of gratitude, and many people don't. And many people just go from one relationship to another relationship. Yeah. Attached to that initial high that comes with the emotional side of it. But as you indicated with Haruka and Vajrayogini, it's like a permanent sense of depth that goes with being with someone on the journey together and loving. That's again symbolized by like having a spiritual guide. You just don't go flip about here all over the place. The spiritual guide, it's like a marriage, that like deeper connection. That's what we yearn for in our relationships. That union of Hooker Yogini, that we're always together. But like as the letter suggests, something inside you recognizes that until you know how to love yourself holistically, in the higher self, and in its relationship to the lower self, and in the relationship to the divine, then we won't fully be able to connect with that person that we're longing for. So what's coming up is symbolic of your inner journey, of what needs to be seen and worked on. And then that gets kind of distorted with a sense of fear about it. It's like, you don't really need to worry because it's going to be another human being. And maybe you'll have a great initial burst of love, but they're a human being, so it won't take them too long to annoy you for you to think, oh, I wish I was just alone again, right? But I think you said it well enough that there's a healthy balance between recognizing what's happening, that you need to learn how to bring love in. 2, recognizing the fear. 3, that you're patient and relying on God, that I'm in the space where I'm meant to be. And 4, that you have a healthy understanding that, I do want a partner. And it's an important thing. And when we're on the path with God, God will provide us in time. We know, we engage in the mind. That's like when we're just like on Tinder, just like scrolling. Or we just discovered Islam through our teacher, or the Sufi, and then we go online just to look at things and see if there's another teacher or another. It's just like, or we're looking and it never works. When we're practicing refuge, things come in their own time. We can make a prayer to God. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm looking for. But it's your will and your time. So I hope this has helped in some way. Maybe just mirroring back your question. I think you just saying it and writing it and probably just hearing me say it just intuitively gives you the sense of what you know needs to be done. You just hear it and it's out. And then just talking about a few things. Hopefully that helps. But please write again if there's anything that still needs to be talked about. And thank you for the question. It's of course very brave to talk about your heart openly and these very, the deepest aspects of our life, right? Who we want to share our heart with, our love with, our time. And you say, don't rush. So, may peace be upon you and your family. May God bless you. And thank you so much for listening.